Welcome to episode 20 of the Sports Geek podcast. On today's podcast, we chat with Dan Harbison to learn from outside the world of sports. The ALeague kicks off and we look at ticketing promos gone wrong.
Welcome to the Sports Geek podcast, the podcast built for sports digital and sports business professionals. And now, here's your host, who's looking forward to long walks on the beach once rehab allows it, Sean Callanan.
Thanks, DJ Joel. Yes, this is episode 20 of the Sports Geek podcast. So thank you very much for joining me on this journey that started back on May 9, that has gone through major surgery, getting an Achilles tendon repaired. But thank you very much to all the people who have been guests on the show so far. Without them, there wouldn't be a podcast, and without you guys downloading this podcast, I wouldn't continue doing it. So just a couple of the stats. Obviously, 5 months, 20 episodes. Thanks to everyone, including James Royer from the first episode, from the Tampa Bay Lightning. 6,500 downloads later. Episode 10 happens to be the most downloaded episode with over 700 downloads, and I think that might have something to do with the guest on that episode, Russell Scabetti, sharing it on thebusinessofsports.com. Thank you very much, Russell. And it's been downloaded in over 58 countries, so I'm going to have to learn how to say thank you in multiple languages. So let's get on to the show. Enough of the backslapping by myself. On today's show, I chat with good friend of mine, Dan Harbison, who is now at Caesars Entertainment, but formerly, and you probably know him from his days at the Portland Trailblazers and the innovations that he brought to the Trailblazers digital team over the last 7 or so years. It's probably more, I'd have to check. Apologies if I've gone short on that, Dan. We chat to him about his new role at Caesars and what he's learnt being outside the world of sports and how similar it actually is to the world of sports. Also later we chat with Daniel Harford on halftime about ticketing promos and some of the ones that have gone wrong and where they've gone wrong and how you can fix it. And then we also take you behind the scenes at the ALeague season launch and how the ALeague has kicked off its season with the Power the Game activation that we built with the guys at Carter Digital. But first, here is my chat with Dan Harbison from Caesars Entertainment with Francis Leach on ABC Grandstand.
Grandstand Breakfast are joined by Sean Callanan from Sports Geek HQ to talk sport in the digital realm each Saturday. G'day, Sean.
G'day, Francis. How you doing?
Yeah, we're all a bit speechless about what's been happening, that's for sure. With the Socceroos copping a belting in Paris, taking their lumps. 6-0 so far.
It is, yeah. It's a bit tough to swallow early in the morning, but hopefully they'll bounce back over the next couple of months.
What's been happening?
So today I wanted to, talk about what different industries offer sports. So before I was Sports Geek, I was a geek and working in the IT space as a developer, and I did jump from industry to industry. There was people that sort of stayed in industry and developed that experience on different verticals, I guess. But for me, I always saw the IT as a ones and zeros. It's all the same from the back end point of view. You're always providing a solution. So whether I was working in government or retail or gaming, I could see how the different industries and the different solutions that they were offering in those industries could be applied in the different verticals. So now I'm working in the world of sports. I'm always looking outside the world of sports and what other people are doing, and how that can be applied to sports. And also, there's also the vice versa. So the things that sports are doing from a point of view of engaging fans and treating members and selling tickets can be applied to other segments of the community.
Give us an example of that. I mean, how would you take the sports social engagement platforms? And as we've talked about before, sport has been driving a lot of that. You look at Twitter, and Twitter's predominantly a sports vehicle. How else can other people leverage that or learn from that?
Well, I think from a sport point of view, you're always trying to develop the fan and deepen the emotional relationship with the fan. And you can do that with all these social channels because you can talk to them and find your brand ambassadors and that kind of thing. Now, you're not going to have the same fervour and passion that you do for a sports team, but you've got to start identifying, what we would call like your digital cheer squad of people who are your brand ambassadors, and there are people who are massive fans of, shoe companies, Nike and Adidas and those likes, and there are people who are massive fans of fast food companies and soft drink companies. They are as much as passionate about that as they are some of their sports teams. So you want to find those kind of people, but you also want to train those kind of fans or those kind of customers to do what you want. So whether it's Instagramming that you're at a hotel or Instagramming that you're at the restaurant or checking in at a cafe, those kind of things. So the same things that sports are doing to train their fans to follow their accounts and be brand advocates, that's what other industries are trying to do as well.
And we're going to meet someone now who does that in a different realm after working in sport.
Yeah, so a good mate of mine, Dan Harbison, hopefully he's on the line.
G'day, Dan.
I am. Hey, guys. Hello.
How you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you guys?
Good. So Dan's formerly from the Portland Trailblazers, and now he is head of new media at Caesars Entertainment, if I've got that right, Dan.
Yeah, that's correct.
So
in Las Vegas.
In Las Vegas. So you're obviously checking in and bragging about where you are all the time.
There's a lot of places to check in at, literally and figuratively.
So what I wanted to ask is, a couple of months into your job at Caesars Entertainment, what's the difference in the role, and what have you taken from your experience at the Portland Trailblazers to Caesars?
Sure. Well, thanks for having me on. Love Melbourne, love Australia. We were able to get down there, so I appreciate it. It's interesting. I've been here for about 2.5 months, and there's a lot more similarities than I was expecting. Sports is such a content-driven kind of category. You have content always happening at the matches, at the games, or even off the field or off the court with athletes and fans talking about your sports or your team. The same thing's going on here, where there is content everywhere. You step out onto the gaming floor or onto the street, and whether it's a huge performer like Britney Spears that's coming into town, or it is a smaller performer, or just people that are having the time of their lives, there's content everywhere, and that's kind of our job to really capture that content and understand what's a great moment to be able to reflect, to convince people to become more fans or more loyal to our brand. So kind of the difference, though, from my role moving from the Trailblazers down here is I went from being a very I oversaw a broad spectrum of digital. So anywhere from development to creative to content creation to live video to search and to all the different advertising. So now I'm focused specifically on social and on mobile strategy. So it's been really good to be able to just kind of zero in and really refine and understand what works in the different channels and with different people. And then on top of that, really think of what would be cool essentially as you're walking around Las Vegas or one of our properties and you have your handheld with you, your mobile device. How should your experience be augmented by your mobile device? Because frankly, that's what everybody has in their hand when they're on vacation. It's walking around. It's their phone. It's not. They don't have a laptop tethered to their back or anything like that. Unless you maybe Shawn, but most of us have our phones.
So when you're doing that, what parameters do you set for yourself to, there must be rules, or not rules so much, but, principles that underpin what you do and don't post and what you're trying to, what themes you're trying to carry through every particular tweet or post that you put up?
Absolutely. I think you have to look at each platform, making sure that you're putting the right content on each platform, because something you put on Twitter may not be this, exactly the same way you present it on Facebook, on Instagram, or Vine for that matter. But, it's really easy, I think, to overshare and to have putting too much content out there, which is kind of funny to say, because it used to be like we were not struggling, but you were really trying to figure out what you're going to post. Now it's everybody wants you to post everything all the time. And with the exception of Twitter, it's still frequency is still pretty pretty important because your tweets can kind of fall off the timeline pretty quickly. So it's good to be active. You just don't want to do one tweet a day. But frankly, the other platforms, you really need to make sure your content you're putting out there is great content.
So you need to be a good self-editor. You need to edit your own own content really carefully so that you're not overstretching the friendship.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that's something that you don't, whenever you start putting out bad content or just mediocre content, you're kind of breaking that trust with the people that are reading it. Frankly, they're looking to you to be the expert or to be kind of on the inside. And if you start kind of giving them stuff that's not interesting, they'll just stop paying attention to you. It's like we all have friends that kind of talk to you about stuff and it's really boring. It's the same thing. You start kind of ignoring that guy's phone calls.
So from a social point of view and the content you're putting out, you don't have that narrow focus that you would have at the Trailblazers. You were able to put out Trailblazer content and know that those fans love that content. But now you've got this, I guess, this broader picture that you're trying to paint. One day you're putting out posts about Britney Spears, another time you're talking about a magic show, other time you're talking about just the experience on the strip. How do you find trying to get that balance of getting that content mix right?
Yeah, and that's a challenge, because we have 9 properties here in Las Vegas, and so making sure that each property has its own voice, has its own channels, and being able to jump between the different ones, it is definitely a challenge, and that's something that, prior to going out to collect content or cover something, you have to have a plan. You almost have that shot sheet before you go out on things that you want to capture, and then once you do, really making sure you're presenting in the right way because, depending on the platform and depending on the brand, things would be shot and used very differently. So from a sports team, we're on Pinterest, but Pinterest just didn't drive that much. And I know a lot of teams continue to, look at that as a viable option. And frankly, the demographics don't pencil out very well for sports and for Pinterest. It's a female-driven site for people to plan and to kind of reflect their identity. Now, reflect your identity and sports go hand in hand, and that totally makes sense. You're able to kind of identify, hey, this is who I am. These are all the different sport teams that I like, or these are the players on these teams that I like. But mainly for planning things, Pinterest continues to be a hard kind of nut to crack for sports, as opposed to for planning for travel, we see that most people who are planning travel are women. And so we have to make sure that the content we're putting on Pinterest actually works well with our strategy to get people to book rooms or to book their trip. So it's depending on platform, you have to kind of look at what's going to work where. As opposed to, the stuff we're putting on Instagram is going to be a little bit more artistic, and the end game there is to get audience, to get them aware about some of the cool new things we have going on, because things are constantly changing here in Las Vegas. I mean, there's new buildings going up all the time and new musical acts happening or new deals coming in. So you have to be pretty active and agile.
Dan, one last thing, quickly just to wrap up. Sports has obviously got a big drive to get data and to start that relationship with a fan and take them off social media into email. How much of that is a focus at Caesars? How much is the things that you're trying to do is to drive those fans or those customers into your database and the sophistication in the back end there?
It's extremely important. It's really interesting. That's one of the reasons why I joined Caesars, is because they've been known to be one of the industry leaders of just in business in general about really CRM and understanding the customer and being able to serve up messaging to that customer in the right way at the right time. And one of the areas that I've come on in to help really beef up is the social and mobile activation of that big data and channeling information into the CRM. So we've got a loyalty program here that was actually one of the first loyalty programs in the world that we put out, called Total Rewards. And that's what it was used by the airlines to kind of use as their blueprint to create airline miles. And they continue to kind of change and augment Total Rewards. And that's something that is really important to me in figuring out how do we go and reward people in social and mobile activity. And frankly, just having them walking around and enjoying different things on our property and being able to reward them for that to drive more loyalty, having them have more engagement with us. But on top of that, we want to know where people are going and, how valuable are they to us, and what do they like? What are the likes and dislikes? And so we're able to be more effective at marketing to them in the long run.
Dan, good of you to talk to us.
That's
and
very
have another great day there in Vegas.
All right, thanks a lot, guys. Appreciate it.
Thanks, mate.
Dan Harbison there, who is the head of digital media at Caesars these days, which, of course, the brand, the name from Vegas.
Exactly. So I look forward to catching up with Dan next time I'm in Vegas.
Yeah, I'm sure he knows how to get you into all the right places. Where people can find you, Shawn Callanan?
SportsGeekHQ.com or look up Sports Geek Podcast on iTunes.
Which is up there at the moment. How many episodes have you done now with the Beers, Blokes and Business podcast?
Oh, so that's the other podcast, Beers, Blokes and Business. We've done 7, and it's the top-ranked business podcast in Australia at the moment.
Oh, number 1 on the chart.
Exactly, with a bullet.
Good to talk to you, mate.
Sign up for Sports Geek News at sportsgeekhq.com/sign up now.
Well, it was actually funny. Only 3 hours, I think, after I got off radio with Francis, we were actually on air when the Socceroos were playing France. And I think 2 or 3 hours later, the Australian Socceroos coach, Holger Ossick, was sacked. So it was a big day in sport. But then again, if you lose 2 football matches, 6-love, it sounds more like a tennis score. There wasn't much likelihood of him going on. Thank you very much to Dan Harbison for joining me on ABC Grandstand. Some of the key takeaways that I took from that, first of all, is Dan's new job title, really focus on social and mobile. Obviously a really key segment for the guys at Caesars to concentrate on. And also the fact that he is now effectively tailoring a lot of the content that he's doing for the mobile customer, because that's where they're consuming it. And the stats bear that out. Over 50% of Facebook's traffic's on mobile. Twitter is nearly exclusively a mobile product. So you've got to remember, when you're pushing out that content from a social perspective, is it consumable on a mobile device? And if you don't have a mobile optimized website, or you don't have an app that does everything that you want it to do, how can you produce content that does fit for a mobile purpose? So it might be something as simple as making an image with all the text so it can be read on a mobile. It could be that simple, or providing a PDF that's easy to download and be able to read on these smartphones. So I think that's very much important to remember, that the mobile device is slowly becoming, it's not slowly becoming, it's quickly becoming the primary device for people to consume content. So thanks to Dan there. We only touched slightly on the loyalty side of it and the CRM side of it, as we've discussed earlier with Chris Freet in Miami, and even the guys at Auckland Blues using True Blue HQ. That whole digital loyalty play is still something that is developing, and we'll be keeping a close eye on it here at Sports Geek. The other thing that was mentioned there by Francis at the end, and giving my other podcast a plug, the Beers, Blokes and Business podcast had their launch at Honey Bar this week. We had 90 people attend, had a really good networking event, ran a couple of panels, and I think we'll probably be running them again. The feedback was good. If just from the tweets alone, not bad for 8 blokes to pull together an event and have it trending Australia-wide for it. If only for 10 minutes, it did hit the trends on Twitter. So I think it does show the power of events and how important they are to connect with your audience. We've run some fan meetups and tweet-ups that have been very successful. So if you're not running events that connect you with your fans, you're not taking full advantage of that opportunity. Next up is my discussion with Harf, and we look at a few ticketing promos gone wrong and what you can do to avoid them.
Shawn Callanan, our sports digital media guru for SportsGeekHQ.com.
Love you, Monday Wednesdays back again. G'day, Shawn.
G'day, Huff. How you doing?
No, going very well, thank you. What do you got for us today?
I'm actually talking about ticketing promotions. There was an article on the Bleacher Report I just tweeted out on at Sports Geek.
Yes.
On a few different promotions, and some of them that haven't quite worked, and some weird ones that have happened. Have you ever heard the term paper the stadium?
Yeah, sort of. I don't know what it means.
Yeah, so papering the stadium effectively means giving away so many free tickets to get the old bums on seats. So
Is that what that means?
that's what I mean. So yeah, if you're having trouble filling your stadium, pay for your stadium, give away all these free tickets. But really, when you're giving away a free ticket, the people don't have the skin in the game. They don't, they're not invested. They haven't put their money in.
Invested.
And they're not going to, they don't have any, they can go, I don't need to turn out. So, the Tampa Bay Rays once gave away 20,000 tickets to one of their games. Their attendance was so bad. So
They wouldn't be doing that right now against the Red Sox.
Well, but the thing is, they have been playing well, but the attendance has always been pretty poor. But giving out so many free tickets, then the market will just sit there and wait because they're going to go, I'll eventually get a free ticket. So it can be really detrimental to your overall strength of your ticket sales because people will always hold back for that discounted or that free ticket. So it's a real strange one. I mean, the minor league teams, especially in the States, both in the minor football leagues and baseball and things like that, they always do a little bit of stunt work and throw a bit of marketing stunts. So one of them is the old sign up the washed up star. I think you've got it there.
Yes.
The Indoor Football League,
Love it.
the Allen Wranglers signed Terrell Owens. And
Why wouldn't you?
Why wouldn't you? And got some coverage. And I don't think Terrell Owens even actually ended up playing a game. I think there was a soccer team that tried to put an offer to Allen Iverson, the basketballer, to come and play for them again. So it's a bit of a marketing stunt. Get them name in the news as a bit of promotion, but it didn't quite work. Another one. And we've actually had these guys on the show before, the Lehigh Valley Iron Pigs. Remember
I love the Iron Pigs.
The Iron Pigs, we remember them because they have the urinal gaming system we've spoken about before.
Can't get enough.
They actually had a promotion where a lucky fan would win, and who wouldn't want to win? A funeral. So a funeral worth $10,000. So exactly, that's really going to drag in the fans through the door. So that was a strange one. Then another one which comes down to this dynamic pricing. So we sort of discussed dynamic pricing once or twice, and that's sort of where the market demand hits at a high point, the tickets go up and that kind of thing. So the Tennessee Vols tried to do that with their student ticketing.
Yep.
Now, when you've got a really large stadium, and this is part of the reason why dynamic pricing really hasn't taken off in Australia, because we've got the MCG and we've got Etihad Stadium, and for the most part, you can walk up and get a seat. So when there's not a strong demand, you effectively it doesn't quite work. And for the Vols, it also doesn't work when your team sucks. So unfortunately, they were paying more to play the big colleges, but they're paying more to see their team get pummeled.
More.
Yeah, so I mean, it doesn't quite work. Didn't really help with the students. And the last one was at the moment the Jaguars are offering. They put out a promotion, effectively saying Jacksonville Jaguars, effectively saying drink for free.
Oh wow, that's
exactly.
a winner.
And you'd think, and that's a winner. And if you like a beer, I love a beer, but it was only really offering you 2 beers and 2 Bud Lights. You're not really going to get drunk. But unfortunately, by putting out that message, it's not much of a start. Wouldn't even touch the sides. But then they rankled the anti-drinking lobbying and the drink driving lobby and all that. It's like it's not the message you should be promoting, and that is correct. So sometimes, good on all these teams for trying all these different promotions. But sometimes you just got to watch what you do and give it a little bit more thought.
Do they ever work?
Oh, some do. I mean, I think the main one is that paper the stadium one is if you're giving away tickets, then you're making the market expect it. I mean, I think where there's somewhere different is potentially where you get your sponsors to potentially give away tickets to their customers or to their fan base. That's a different market. And so that's allowing your sponsors to introduce potentially new fans, and those tickets can be a perk for being a customer or that kind of thing. So it might be, have a meal at our restaurant. Here's a voucher and you can get a discounted ticket to our game. So that's driving and attracting new fans. But if you're just flooding the market with free tickets and people know, I can always get a ticket over there, then what's the incentive for people to go buy one?
You can read it at the Bleacher Report. You can get a link to that at sportsgeekhq.com. He's the best in the business, Shawn. Appreciate your time.
Cheers, Harp.
Want to maximize returns from your digital team? Contact Sports Geek about content and commercialization workshop.
The last thing I wanted to touch on for this episode 20, you can get the show notes as you can with all episodes, sportsgeekhq.com/20. Just put the number in and you will get the show notes for that episode. This week, the A-League season kicked off, and very happy to be working with the A-League on developing their social and digital presence and really developing their fan base. And it really hits the mark with their current campaign, where the slogan is "You Power the Game," and they're really putting the fans at the forefront of their marketing campaign this year because they provide a very special atmosphere at the stadium, and definitely the same as online. So we've tried to build a few activations, a few strategies around that, and you'll see those over the next couple of weeks. I was lucky enough to go to the Melbourne Victory game at Etihad Stadium. It was a Melbourne Victory home game, and the sounds of the game that you're hearing just underneath my voice is the Victory fans in the North Terrace firing up. So I suggest you have a look at the A-League You Power the Game TVC. It very much features the fans. The links are in the show notes. But also, what also is linked in the show notes is a digital activation that we did using the guys and working with the guys at Carter Digital, and James Noble, a good friend of mine, who's actually on the Beers, Blokes and Business podcast. His team at Carter Digital helped put it together. Primarily, it's a Facebook app or a Facebook activated mini site. It's actually mobile friendly. Again, so from talking to Dan how important mobile is, if you actually go to youpowerthegame.com.au, you can see the site and log in with Facebook. But what you can do is it pulls in the Facebook avatar of the fan and gets their fan statements on how they power the game. And we've been getting some really good, passionate content from the fans. So I expect that to continue. We're actually going to be repurposing some of that content in some of the messaging that we're using with A-League over the start of the season. So it's going to be a really interesting summer for Australian sports fans, with the three key domestic leagues over summer. All have got free-to-air coverage, all of varying levels, but it's good to see the A-League getting coverage on SBS. You've got the Big Bash League that has moved off Fox Sports to Channel 10, so there'll be a lot of Big Bash cricket on Channel 10 over summer, and also the NBL will still have some coverage on Channel 10. So the fact that all of these sports still looking to find a foothold and grow their fan base, the access to free-to-air will be very important. I expect the digital numbers to follow with those sports. So that's it for the end of episode 20, and since it is a milestone episode, I thought I'd add a new segment, and that is, who will I dedicate this episode to? And so I'm going to go on the number, and I'm going to look at a jersey number and see who I should dedicate this to. And the number 20, I looked through the annals. I'm an NBA fan. I didn't go with Doug Collins in the 76ers or even Allen Houston as a Pistons fan. I actually went to the NFL and to the Detroit Lions, and a famous number 20 there, Barry Sanders. So this episode is dedicated to Barry Sanders. Thank you very much for listening, and thank you very much for those iTunes reviews. My name is Shawn Cullen from Sports Geek. Talk to you soon.
Check out which teams work with Sports Geek at sportsgeekhq.com/clients. Please leave a review on iTunes. Go to sportsgeekhq.com/iTunes. Find all Sports Geek podcasts at sportsgeekhq.com/SGP. Thanks for listening to the Sports Geek Podcast.